The consumption of meat in Colombia is approximately 18 kilograms per person annually. In Colombia, during 2014, 4,332,000 bovine heads were sacrificed, which represented 947,000 tons of meat production. In contrast with Australia, where meat consumption is over 93 kilograms per capita, and in Argentina, where it is approximately 87 kilograms per capita annually. These two last countries represent the higher levels of meat consumption in the world and in Latin America, respectively. In Colombia, there are 30 million hectares used for cattle, which generates 250,000 jobs in the country. Nowadays, there are 22.5 million of bovine heads in Colombia, and the economic sector generates 21% of the GDP in the country, which is around 14 billion pesos annually.
Meat production as modern practices of animal raising directly contribute to water and air pollution and increase carbon dioxide emissions, while crop production for animal feed and the use of land for grazing threaten biodiversity and wildlife species. One of the most important environmental problems caused by cattle is water pollution. According to investigations, cattle contaminates 10 times more than human contamination and 3 times more than industrial contamination. Nowadays, the principal contaminating agents of meat production include animal wastes, antibiotics used for controlling animals' health, and hormones. However, the principal problem has its focal point in the farmers, who release those wastes in different stocks of water, such as lakes, rivers, among others. For example, here in Colombia, the most contaminated rivers include Cauca and Medellin.
Because of meat consumption, multiple harmful gases are freed into the environment, damaging our health. Meat production over the last couple of years has been industrialized, which means the number of animals has been increasing exponentially along the consumption. Cattle is the main contributor to the sector's emissions with about 4.6 gigatons CO2 equivalent, which represents more than the 50% of those animal emissions. The principal emissions caused by meat are mainly because of the excess of excrement as well as the animal's accumulation.
The greenhouse gases are composed by 6 different gases which are responsible for the greenhouse effect on Earth. This effect produces an increase in the temperature by the irradiation of the atmosphere. In the anthropogenic era, the greenhouse effect has increased its effects, because many human activities are responsible for the production of greenhouse gases. One of these activities is cattle. Cattle is responsible for an important portion of the production of greenhouse gases, such as methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and also it produces ammonia, a non-greenhouse gas that affects negatively plants and livestock, because it's a toxic compound for these living organisms. Methane is produced by the natural process of ramen made by cows, which fermentates the food being eaten by the animal. This production of methane is a natural process being difficult for humans to control it. On the other side, carbon dioxide is produced by the deforestation and burning of pastures and land, a human process for having land with better qualities for cattle. The last greenhouse gas produced by cattle is nitrous oxide, which is used as a component that enriches the food grains and plants for the animals, making it more resistant and healthy. The last problematic gas appears as a consequence of the use of nitrous oxide, because as the animals can't digest this component in a proper way, the wastes of the animal react with the nitrous oxide producing ammonia.
The amount of land used for cattle farming has increased in the last decades. Nowadays, it uses 30% of the entire land surface, not only for the livestock but for the crops to feed them. Actually, the farmers uses 33% of the total arable lands of the earth to make food for the cattle. This gives us a big concern in what land use means, because those fields were natural habitats for different species and nowadays they are crops for monocropping. In Colombia, the cattle raising areas are located from the Andean highlands to the eastern plains. Those areas constitute about 17% of Colombia's total land, about 40 million hectares, and from that 40 million, 60% were tropical forests. This gives us a quick overview of how land has changed because of meat production uses. Now we are going to see an interview to better understand how cattle farming is in Colombia. ¿Cuántas vacas tiene?
Moment, the inventory of the livestock in Sevilla is of 340 animals, around 310 females and 30 males.
De unos 310 hembras y unos 30 machos.
¿De qué tipo?
It's a milk cattle, double purpose. We have various races like Simgir, which is a mix of European Simmental with a Brazilian milk gear. We also have Jersey livestock, which is also for milking. Simbra, which is a livestock with double purpose, used more for meat. It is a mix between the Brahman and the Simmental, and we also have Girolandas, which are a mix between the Gir and Milk Holstein. These cows are mainly for milk.
Que es el cruce entre el Brahman y el Simmental, y manejamos las Girolandas, que es un cruce entre Gir y Holstein, lechero. Prácticamente la línea es casi lechera.
¿En cuánto terreno están?
In this moment, we have two parcels with a total of 168 hectares. It's a land ubicated in San Juanito, Antioquia, and the other land is on Sevilla State, near to Hispania, Antioquia, and it has 18 hectares.
¿Cómo se alimentan las vacas?
In this moment, we have two systems for feeding the livestock. The male livestock is fed with concentrate, a mixture, fertileche. We give them cotton seeds and brown flour, which is a flour obtained of corn, and the rest of the animals are in a paddock waiting their moment of entrance for being pregnant and being milked. These ones are fed with water, salt, and grass, and we are controlling the vaccines with them.
Que sale del maíz, ¿sí? Y los demás animales están en potrero, esperando en su momento de entrar a salir preñadas y entrar a ordeño, y estas se alimentan con agua, sal y pasto, y se están controlando las vacunas con ellas.
¿Cuánto consume de agua una vaca al día?
Yo creo que
I think that a cow consumes around 20 and 25 liters of water.
de agua.
¿Conoce usted alguno de los impactos ambientales de la ganadería?
Bueno, yo creo que nos han comentado
Well,
mucho
I think that we've been told a lot about the livestock expelling gases by the rectum. These gases have methane and damage the ozone layer.
gases vía recto. Estos gases tienen metano y dañan la capa de ozono.
To understand the consumption of meat in Colombia, we'll start with some consumers to investigate what they know about livestock and its environmental impacts.
¿Consume usted carne de res?
Yes,
¿Cuántas veces a la semana?
around 3 or 4.
¿Estaría dispuesto a cambiar su dieta de carne para evitar impactos ambientales?
Yes, because it is harmful for my own health. It can produce cancer.
¿Sabe usted de impactos ambientales ocasionados por la ganadería?
Yes, livestock produces many methane gas that goes to the atmosphere and affects the ozone layer.
¿Cada cuánto consume proteína animal a la semana?
Every day,
Y proteína de res.
3 or 4 times per week.
¿Es consciente de los impactos ambientales del consumo de carne?
Environmental? No.
Si supiera que es uno de los mayores impactos ambientales, incluyendo efectos en los gases invernaderos, ¿cambiaría su dieta para mitigar estos daños?
Of course I would.
¿Consume usted carne de res?
Yes, I eat more or less once a week.
¿Estaría dispuesto a cambiar su dieta de carne para evitar impactos ambientales?
No,
¿Por
because
qué?
I think that the beef has necessary nutrients that are not found in vegetables or fruits.
Que no se encuentran como en vegetales o en frutos.
¿Sabe usted de algún impacto ambiental ocasionado por la ganadería?
I think that it has some impact in the land and soil. As a conclusion, it is important to highlight that some consumers don't know and are not well informed of the environmental impacts of cattle. It is necessary to sensitize people in a better way about these environmental damages so that they can take a better choice in the moment of choosing their diet. Also, many people still believe that they need to consume beef of animal meat for obtaining necessary nutrients for a healthy life, even more in Colombia, where beef consumption is also a cultural tradition, as many typical and historical plates include beef. On the other side, the livestock farmers also lack of knowledge and aren't well informed of the environmental impacts that they are producing with cattle and have only the basic knowledge of sustainable practices. In Colombia, the government has poor actions for controlling deforestation for cattle and crops in rural areas. This is why the government must increase its actions and presence in the rural areas by putting more environmental authorities and normatives.